All men who shall enter this, my tomb, and who are impure, they shall be judged, and an end shall be made for them. I shall seize their neck like a bird. I shall cast the fear of myself into them.
Welcome to Spooky Ass Shit. I am your host, Eric Dwinells. And we're going to be talking about the curse of the Pharaohs tonight. But before I really get into that, we got a little business to take care of. First of all, you may notice that my voice sounds different once again. Once again, I have a summer cold. No fun, especially when I have a show opening in less than a week. I'm pretty confident it'll go away before that, at least the part that's affecting my voice, and I'll be able to perform my role as expected. Excuse me. But it might make this episode a little bit rougher than normal. Also, I apologize. There was no episode last week. I have been extremely busy between day job and rehearsals for Rock of Ages, which, as I said, opens on Friday, June 23rd, the day before my birthday. And just misjudged the time and wasn't able to get an episode out. We all deserve some time off once in a while, even me, right? So this week, as I said, we're talking about the curse of the Pharaohs, and I have extensive notes on this. So I think, we're going to check the time, but I think this is going to end up being a 2-part episode. And you'll get part 1 this week, and part 2 next week. Which is a good thing, because with the show opening, and we have 2 shows on Saturday, I don't know when I'll have time to record another episode before next weekend. So hopefully this does fill up enough time to do a 2-parter. It's all good stuff, interesting stuff. I wouldn't say this, in fact, I definitely wouldn't say this is the reason we're doing the episode, but I have noticed that actually this weekend, or maybe the weekend before, is the opening of the new Universal The Mummy movie, starring Tom Cruise. I'm not so much excited about the movie, but what I am hesitantly excited about is the launch of what they are calling Universal's Dark Universe. They're reintroducing all their classic Universal monster movies. Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, The Invisible Man, The Creature from the Black Lagoon. All the monsters are coming back in theory. And here's the thing. I absolutely love those old Universal monster movies. I grew up watching them from probably about the time I was 10 or 11. Whenever the Sci-Fi Channel first came on the air, they used to show those movies in what they called the Moonlight Matinee, I think. And I always enjoyed them. And I still love them to this day. Now, because of the success of the Marvel Universe and the hit-or-miss success of the DC Universe, Universal's trying to find their own way, and they say, oh, we've got all these classic monsters that everybody loves. Let's make a new universe built on that. So the characters are going to interconnect in the different movies, and you'll see crossovers and all that kind of thing. Now, I say I'm not super excited about it because I just don't know if this is going to work. And actually, I saw the Mummy movie, and I wouldn't say it's a bad movie. It's a fine action movie. But the horror elements are completely missing, and they did attempt humor several times, and each and every time it fell flat. So it's fine as an action movie, and the Mummy's actually pretty hot. But otherwise, it didn't do anything to excite me for the rest of the movies. That said, it was still better than I thought it would be. I'm not a huge fan of the Tom Cruise action movies. Tom Cruise, whatever. I don't really have super strong opinions on his acting one way or the other. He's fine in movies. I don't mind him. In real life, seems like a bit of a pill, but I can let that go to enjoy a movie. So let's just handle the last bit of before we really dive into the show here. First off, I already mentioned Rock of Ages opens this coming weekend. That's June 23rd. We open. If you don't have tickets yet and you want to check out the production, go to mltlive.org. You can order tickets there. It's a very short run with very limited seating. So if you're in the North Shore area of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and you want to come check this out, please do that. I do have a very large role in this production. I'm playing Lonnie. I don't say that to brag. I say that so that you know if you're coming pretty much to see me, you're going to get your money's worth. As always, thank you so much for listening to this episode today. Please don't forget to share it with all your spooky friends. We want to grow the Spookaroo Legion. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show on Apple Podcast or Stitcher or iHeartRadio, wherever you happen to hear the show. It would really mean a lot to us, all of us, mostly me, but all of us here behind the scenes at Spooky Ass Shit. Don't forget to visit our website, spookyasshit.com or spookyas.com. They both take you to the same place, and that is the show's blog page. From there, you can listen to every single episode. You can find pictures from this episode and other episodes, sometimes YouTube videos and other clips, as well as helpful links, including links to our social media pages. We are at Spooky Ass Shit on Instagram and on Twitter. And of course, you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/spookyas. All right, are you ready to get into it? Are you ready to talk about the curse of the Pharaohs? Now, mostly today we're going to be talking about King Tut, King Tutankhamun, and the curse that's supposed to have surrounded the excavating of his tomb. But we're going to be talking about curses in general, ancient Egyptian curses in general, but mostly centered around King Tut. So, let's start there. In 1922, Howard Carter, who was being paid by Lord Carnarvon of England, was searching the desert for tombs of Egyptian kings, who of course were known as pharaohs. Now, pharaohs were kings, but they weren't just kings. They were supposed to be incarnations of gods. So when a pharaoh died, it was a big deal. The whole country helped prepare for the funeral. And of course, we all know that mummification was popular in Egypt. The point of mummification was that the Egyptians believed in resurrection, but they also believed that the physical body would get up and start roaming around again, and that they would need all sorts of items for the afterlife. So they'd mummify the body to preserve it. They had the jars that were full of like the heart and the liver and all that stuff. And they also had all sorts of furniture and pets and all sorts of things, valuables, that they would entomb along with the pharaoh. Obviously, these tombs became prime targets for treasure hunters, both in ancient times and in modern times. So when modern archaeology started to excavate in Egypt, many of the tombs had already been gone through by thieves, who would take the valuable possessions from the pharaoh's tombs and sell them on the black market. There were collectors all over the world willing to pay high prices for these authentic Egyptian relics. Howard Carter, the archaeologist who was being funded by Lord Carnarvon, had yet to find an undisturbed tomb. Everything they'd found was basically just dirt, or perhaps a tomb that had already been raided by thieves and there was really nothing in there. After 5 years of searching and finding nothing, Lord Carnarvon said to Howard Carter, "Look, I'm sorry, I love Egypt and I'd love to find some amazing discovery, but it's been 5 years and I just haven't really gotten much return on my investment, so we got to shut this down." But Howard Carter said, "Hold on, Lord Carnarvon. I am doing something that nobody has done before. I am going through not just making blind guesses, I am going through systematically searching every area of the Valley of the Kings. I've got it all marked out here on this map, and as you can see, we've gone through most of it, and it's true, we haven't found anything yet. But there is still just a little bit of area left to explore. And if you could just give me one more season's worth of funding, I'm certain that we can finish looking in this area, and hopefully we'll find something that has never been discovered before. But if not, at least we'll know for sure we didn't leave anything behind. We checked every nook and cranny. Lord Carnarvon said, okay, I'm going to give you one more season, and that's it. If you can't figure it out here, if you don't find anything, that's it. We're shutting this program down. Just 3 days after this conversation, Howard Carter and his team unearthed an ancient stairway which led to a door marked with an unbroken royal seal. Carter immediately ran off to send a telegram back to Lord Carnarvon in England. He said, "Think we've found an entrance to a magnificent tomb. The seal is intact, awaiting your arrival." Carter was smart enough to know that Lord Carnarvon wouldn't want some major discovery to happen on his dime without being present. So he said, hey, we found the door. We're going to guard it. We're going to wait till you get over here from England. And then you and me, buddy, we're going in. And the most important thing, again, is that the seal was unbroken. So this seemed to be an undisturbed tomb, the first of its kind ever found. Having sent this telegraph, Howard Carter was about to return to the expedition site when suddenly one of his house servants came running up to him with a handful of yellow feathers. "Are those from my pet canary?" said Carter. "I heard a rustling noise," said the servant, "and when I went in the room, a cobra was in the bird cage, devouring the bird." "Oh, the poor fellow," replied Carter. "Sir, it is worse than that. This is an omen. As you know, the cobra is a symbol of the pharaoh. It is on the royal headdress. Don't you see? This is a warning. The pharaoh does not want you to enter that tomb." "Come now, good sir, don't be a fool," replied Carter. "This is mere superstition. You just be sure the cobra is no longer in the house, and I'll get on with my business." And so he did. Soon after, Lord Carnarvon did arrive in Egypt, and he brought with him his teenage daughter. Carter led them along with his team to the door of the tomb, which was inscribed with the name Tutankhamun, known to us today as King Tut. Carter chiseled away at the door until a hole was opened. He held a candle inside and beheld wonders. Carnarvon asked, "Is there anything in there? Do you see anything?" And Carter replied, "I see wonderful things." Officially, the men were supposed to wait until archaeologists from the Egyptian government came along to go into the tomb. However, unofficially, they opened the tomb on their own. The first one to step in was Lord Carnarvon's daughter. Her eyes fell upon wonder after wonder, covered in gold and brightly painted. Next, Carter and Carnarvon entered. What they discovered astounded them. A nearly intact tomb of an Egyptian pharaoh, the first discovery of its kind. They discovered over 5,000 objects in the tomb. But of course, that's not what we're here to talk about. Only a few months later, by now the spring of 1923, while still in Egypt, Lord Carnarvon cut himself while shaving. The cut was on an exact spot where a mosquito had bitten him the day before. Curiously, the wound would not heal. Days later, Carnarvon developed a fever and became seriously ill. The mosquito bite had become infected, and Carnarvon's symptoms began to grow worse. Specialists were called in, but there was no saving Carnarvon. He died on April 5th, 1923, at the age of 56. At the exact moment of his death, all the lights in Cairo went out. Utility workers could find no way to turn the electricity back on, nor could they discover why it had gone off in the first place. 20 minutes later, the power inexplicably returned. While all this was happening in Egypt, back home at Lord Carnarvon's castle in England, his dog, Susie, was sleeping in her basket when she suddenly stood up, howled, and then collapsed to the ground, dead. According to the true believers, the curse of the pharaoh had claimed its first human victim. When Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon first discovered the tomb of King Tut, they decided they would give exclusive rights to the story of the tomb and pictures to the London Times newspaper. However, the world wanted to hear the story of King Tut's tomb, and many papers were frustrated when they were constantly turned away by guards at the site of the excavation. They were not granted any interviews with anyone officially on the team and could take no pictures. They wanted a story to report. Well, after the death of Lord Carnarvon, it seemed they had one. The world's press had a field day reporting on Lord Carnarvon's death. They finally had a juicy story. Foolhardy foreigners ignore local superstition and unleash an ancient curse. Papers reported that a curse was carved into King Tut's tomb. They variously reported that it said, "I shall kill all who cross this threshold," or, "Those who enter this sacred tomb shall swift be visited by winged death." Carter essentially shrugged off these stories and continued working. He did note, however, that he would not go out of his way to deny them. After all, stories of curses may keep treasure hunters away and keep his excavation safe. It doesn't seem that the story of the curse had worked out the way Carter hoped it might. The excavation site was soon plagued by tourists and curiosity seekers. Most visitors were kept far enough away from the tomb, but every once in a while a VIP would turn up, and Carter would feel compelled to give them a personal tour of King Tut's tomb. One of these VIPs was railroad tycoon George Gould. Gould enjoyed his tour with Carter, but that night he said he did not feel well. It was soon discovered that he was running a fever. By the next morning, Gould was dead. Similar stories have told of another unknown Western visitor, as well as one of the men who helped open the tomb, and another one who helped remove some of its contents, though there is little evidence to back up these particular claims. Due to the careful cataloging of every article found in the tomb, it took a while before they actually reached the sarcophagus of King Tut himself, where his body was interred. Once the body was discovered, however, Howard Carter did something extraordinary. He stripped away 15 layers of linen burial wrappings and discovered the corpse was wearing many gold amulets and rings, not to mention its famous golden face, which was also removed. But the corpse, having been decaying for 3,000 years, and having been treated with a number of oils and other ointments, the jewelry was entirely glued on to the corpse. Now this presented a problem for Howard Carter. He wanted those jewels, but they were stuck to the corpse of the boy king. But Carter came up with a plan. He simply cut up the boy's body and pried the jewels from his cold, dead hands and neck and feet and ankles. It is said that within 14 days, 2 of the men who helped Carter dissect King Tut mysteriously died. Fear spread as papers kept reporting on the mysterious curse of the Pharaoh. Westerners who had been collecting those Egyptian antiquities stolen by grave robbers oftentimes sent those items to the British Museum, saying they wanted to get rid of the object and the curse it may contain. Benito Mussolini, known to be a superstitious dictator, removed the mummy that had been given to him as a gift from its public viewing place. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, author of the Sherlock Holmes mysteries, even speculated on the curse himself, saying it was probably not the spirit of the pharaoh, but actually some kind of elements left behind by the priests of ancient Egypt that had affected Carter's crew. Richard Bethel, Howard Carter's personal secretary, died mysteriously in his sleep. Police determined that he'd been smothered to death, though they could not say by who or what. 3 months later, Bethel's father committed suicide by jumping out of a 7th-floor window. He left a note blaming his son's death on the curse of the Pharaohs. On the way to the funeral, the hearse transporting the body of Bethel Sr. struck and killed an 8-year-old boy. Carter eventually put Tut's body back together and reinterred it inside of its tomb. For decades, King Tut would remain undisturbed, and most of his items remained in his homeland. But the world wished to see the treasures of King Tut's tomb. So finally, in the 1970s, the government of Egypt announced that they would be sending King Tut's treasures on a world tour. Artifacts from Tut's tombs would be visiting museums all over the world, and finally, the people of the world would get their chance to gaze face to face with the gold mask of the boy king and behold other items found in his tomb. People all over the world clamored to see the exhibit, but the Egyptian director of antiquities had his misgivings. He claimed to have had a dream in which it was revealed to him that he would die if any of King Tutankhamun's possessions ever left Egypt. 3 months later, while the king's items were touring around the world, he was killed in an automobile accident. When the traveling exhibit finally reached London, the daughter of Lord Carnarvon, the very same girl who had been the first living person to enter King Tut's tomb in 3,000 years, visited the exhibit. When reporters asked her about the curse that supposedly took her father's life, she responded, "Well, I was the very first person to enter the tomb in 1923, and now I'm in my 70s, and I'm still kicking. I don't believe in curses." On her way out of the exhibit, she suffered a massive stroke. And that is where we are going to end part 1 of Curse of the Pharaohs. I know it's a little bit shorter than a normal episode, but again, I want to make sure that you get another episode next week, so I'm going to record it right now, but I'm going to release it next weekend. It's got some good stuff too. We're going to kind of go through some reasons why the curse may not be quite as big as it's hyped up to be. And we're going to talk about some modern curses. Believe it or not, the pharaohs are still being blamed for deaths, even in modern times. So in the meantime, again, please, 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 as a birthday present to me, share the show with anyone you think might be interested, whether it be this episode or a past episode. You can find ways to share all of them on the website. That's spookyas.com or spookyasshit.com. Don't forget to like, rate, subscribe, review, all that good stuff on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, wherever else you may be listening to this podcast. You can follow us on social media at spookyasshit at both Twitter and Instagram. And you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/spookyas. On a side note, I had the chance to visit the King Tut exhibit as it came through New York City in 2010. On the next episode, I'll tell you all about that and the possible curse that I developed from it. Until then, don't be afraid.